Thank you. It's great to be here, and I don't think I can top Dilek's talk with that much energy. That was really impressive. I'm still flabbergasted a little bit. I've got the best job in the world, I think. I'm a teacher. I'm a history teacher, secondary education. I love my job. I love working with kids. And it was even better when I started working at my school about 6 years ago, UNIC. It's a school where we have a whole child approach, where we look at a child based on relationships, and I learned stuff there with what my colleagues did that I couldn't do before. I was a history teacher, a subject teacher, and there I became, I think, a whole teacher. Before that, I worked in a system that was top-down, really rigid, 60 minutes. I couldn't work with other subjects, and I felt really constrained, and was thinking of leaving education. It was only because I started working there, was asked to work there at UNIC, that I remained in education. And what I saw there really changed my life. It was really amazing. What the kids could do there, the way they could reflect on themselves, was something I've never experienced before. I never experienced as a kid, but also not as an adult, sorry. So everything went right there. But at the same time, I was working in a school that was empowering me and the students. The system itself, so the ministry and the inspectorate, were really dragging us down. They were saying, well, you're not doing a good job. Your grades aren't in order. You're not teaching the child properly, what Dilek was saying as well. So what is this kind of teaching? And so that you approach it, and I'm doing it from another perspective, using ICT, getting them outside of the school, going to museums, talking to politicians, etc. They didn't like that. So after about 3 months, I was talking to them, and I was telling them they could change the world. They said, well, hold on, Jelmer. You're telling us that you can change the world, so why aren't you doing it yourself? And that was really, for me, was like a life-changing moment. Students were actually telling me that I should go on and change the world. I never expected that. And I started doing that and exploring what the system was about. So what is the education system? I never really thought about it. I was just teaching a lot, and I had some experience in it. I'm a history teacher, so I like systems. And we found out through networking, social media, talking to lots of different people, that this is the Dutch education system. And somewhere here, well, there are some teachers involved, but not many. It's always other people telling us, me, how to run the system, or what to do in the classroom. And what that did to us is really narrowing education down to, well, small bits, and managing it, doing it through spreadsheets. And if you produced a good grade, then I did my job well. Well, I couldn't take that anymore. I didn't think I was doing a good job. I think it was harming our kids as well. That's called a sort of neoliberal managerial system. So really, all these small little dots, that's education. So if you produce those little dots, if you do what we tell you, then we give you some money. I don't disagree with commercialization, but I do disagree with a really narrow focus on education. That's happening worldwide. It's actually spreading across the world. It has been spreading across the world for 20 years. It's called the Global Education Reform Movement. And it's not like there are some people sitting in a tower and saying, well, we're going to change education. It's actually lots of people combined who think they're actually doing a good job. It's happening in Indonesia, it's happening in Australia, it's happening in Singapore even, because they're changing it. It's happening in Chile, it's happening in the Netherlands as well. And that's how I learned that other systems are actually changing and doing things differently. Especially Finland, but also now Singapore, were really a big inspiration for us. And what was happening, at least what I thought, was that they were pushing the teacher outside of education. And we're right at the bottom. Well, actually the best experiences are there. The best people who know what education is about are actually at the bottom. So what do we do about it? Well, I think we should put Dilek on top. Let Dilek run the education system. Let teachers also run the education system. So what we did was write a book. We started to approach different researchers, teachers who I knew were really able to express themselves. We approached every, well, major international researcher we could find. They all said yes. And even if they said, well, I don't have the time, but I do want to support you, everybody wanted to support this idea. We did that. We approached politicians, and we campaigned around it. And when the book came out in about 2.5 years ago, it was 2 weeks later that it was already discussed in Parliament. It's called The Alternative, in Dutch Het Alternatief, and we really wanted to create a new paradigm of how to change education. So 2 weeks after the publication, we already started to have this discussion with politicians. Here you see the Secretary of Education. As she read it, there's these little sticky notes in it, and we discussed what we could do to change education. And what we think should happen is called flipping the system. Instead of the government or some other people telling us what to do, the government should listen to what the teachers have actually to say and listen to what they think is the best in education. So every morning the Secretary of Education should stand up when he gets out of bed, or he or she gets out of bed, and says, well, what do my teachers need? Because when you do this, teachers have to take responsibility. They can't say, well, it's a system. I don't care about the children. It happens too often in education. I know teachers who don't consider this question. But if you do have the responsibility, you can't say it's someone else's responsibility. It is your responsibility, and you will take responsibility for the whole child, for everything. And I think there's an urgency there as well. If you look at all these economic developments, what we are doing is standardizing education, and at the same time robots are taking over our jobs as well. So these are the jobs that are growing, so there's new skills that you need, and everything that can be done by robots is being done by robots. So what do? We standardize education. That's stupid, because the robots will take over those jobs. So what we need in a standardized world, a digital world, is a more humane, human education. Focus on what makes us human. And that's about relationships. It's about agency, student agency. So students should be able to reinvent the world for themselves, for the greater good, do it together. But if you want to have student agency, you also need to have teacher agency. Teachers need to reshape education as well. Not just in the classroom, not just in the village. The whole education system should be changed by teachers. So what I've been doing, I've been working in the classroom, working in school on a regional level, national level, international level, and I think every teacher is able to do this. If in the right circumstance, like I was at UNIC, if you're in the right circumstances, everybody can flourish. Everybody can focus on their talent. So there's a double learning loop. So what we did then was also write an international version, again with lots of research, but also now with teachers from all over the world. It's called Flipping the System, and that we can together as teachers, combined with all the other stakeholders, change education all around the world. So that's what we do. And what do? There's also 6 principles that we need to focus on. First of all is trust. Most of education is based on fear. Fear of failure, and we like to manage everything, we like to control everything, and that's not what we should do. And you can measure trust. This is like how trust is in all across the world, OECD countries. Here you have managers, school leaders saying, well, we give responsibility to the teachers, and what do the teachers say? Well, I don't really agree with that. So this is distrust. These are distrustful systems. What you have over here are systems that are full of trust, and you can measure that within the school. You can, as teachers, you can really have these instruments to say, well, look at it, it's not really working, you're saying you're giving us responsibility, but you're actually not doing it. You can do it on a school level. These are teacher-powered schools in the United States. There are about 110 of them, and they're teacher cooperatives. They're run by teachers, usually also together with parents, community schools, like Dilling is doing. You have these really good examples from all around the world, teacher-led schools, and they're really working. No teacher turnover rates, really good grades as well. Everything is working there, so why aren't we doing it all around the world, also in Turkey? It also has to do with teachers themselves. Most teachers don't even think about what education is anymore. So if you, teachers here in the room, why do you give grades? What is a grade? What does it say? And why are you doing that? I know a lot of teachers in Holland who don't think about that question. That's because they don't think about the purpose of education, so why they are doing it. And if you stand for nothing, you will fall for anything. And that's been happening in education. So education has all these different domains. Diploma, a qualification, socialization for the greater goods and culture and working and living together, but also for your personal development, the personal development of the child. And when you have a balance between the two, between the three, then you know that you have a good education. Then you know what a grade actually means. But you have to think about it. You have to think, do I have to give this grade? What does the grade represent? Can I do it in another way? And I think you should. A third way, that's really, for us, was instrumental, that we had to organize ourselves as teachers. So we said we need to organize ourselves within a professional body, and we need to say to the public that we can be trusted, that we can manage education. And so pride is not something you can have, but honor is something from society you must receive. And to do that, you need to organize yourself and show that you can be trusted. Set your own standards. Show that you care. Open up the classroom doors. Organize it yourselves. Don't wait for someone else to do it. And all around the world, there are teachers organizing themselves to great effect. And that gives the government also the ability to give more responsibility to the teaching profession, us as a profession. Collaboration. So if you don't want to have a standardized control mechanism, you need to have another kind of control mechanism. So open up the classroom doors. Let the process itself be the quality. And open up those classroom doors and people will start to trust you. Open up the classroom doors, visit each other's classroom, other schools, look at what kind of lesson materials you have, and that process itself is enough of a quality. So that's what we're doing in the UNIC as well. Really open also for the students, so we're modeling it. We're using the same kind of working also with the students themselves. And that kind of things really changes the mindset in the students, but also for the teachers, and we're doing this with other schools all across the Netherlands. So now we have collective autonomy, not individual autonomy, but as a profession, we are showing that we can be trusted through collaboration. Fifth one, and it's really important that we also can organize for ourselves support structures. And you can't just expect someone to do it in their own time, or someone to change overnight and not support them through facilitation. So what we did was also introduce other things. We borrowed it from other systems. In Canada, for example, they have this leadership program, innovation program, so that you can ask for funds, that you can, as a teacher or as teams of teachers, can have your own innovation. So that we introduced it in the Netherlands as well. And sort of like a 5 million fund that's just for teachers. It's not for school leaders, not for board members, just for teachers to start their own innovations. And we created a whole network, or we are creating at this moment, creating a whole network of teachers who are working on this together, and they're in learning labs, etc. But it doesn't happen overnight. You have to create these kinds of support structures. And I just came back from Singapore, which also is a really big inspiration. Create career opportunities for ambitious teachers so that they can remain in the classroom. Here, this track, master teachers who are working on a national level, but also still are teaching, just like I'm doing. There's no support structure yet in the Netherlands, but we want to copy this and allow for the whole system to be run by teachers. I was talking to the Director General of Education. He used to be a teacher, and sometimes he went back into the classroom. Everywhere I went, I was talking to teachers in Singapore. I want to have that in the Netherlands as well, and that's what we're going to do. We're introducing a really big reform next year, and we're going to create this whole new support structure throughout the curriculum development, and that's how we're going to really empower more teachers to do this as well. And then lastly, you can't expect anything to do without teachers having more time. Most teachers are, in most countries, are just teaching. And I spoke to a professor from Hong Kong, and they know it really well in East Asia. When teachers are surviving, they're not focused on student learning. And that's what's happening in most educational systems that I know. So on the left here, on the right, you have American systems. Most of it, yellow, is just teaching. And what are they doing in Eastern Asia? Singapore, Shanghai, and also in Hong Kong. This green space is just for collaboration, class visits. It's also just for curriculum development, professional development, individual professional development. You can go on leaves for 6 months and go on a personal learning journey as well. And I'm working in a system that's over there. So we said to our politicians, if you really want to do all the stuff that you say that we want to do, give us more time. So that's the next step where we're going to introduce. We are going to get more time in the Netherlands. So what we have to do as teachers is approach everybody as equals. The Secretary of Education, the inspectorate, people from the ministry, school leaders. I think I have something really valuable to add to that system. I think all teachers have something really valuable to add to the system. And that's the mindset we all should have. And you should be the change yourself. I heard it before. If you don't start it, if you don't do it yourself, no one else will. It's only us ourselves that we can change the system. And we always use this motto. It's an old saying from the 17th century. If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? But if I'm only for myself, just by myself, what am I? And if not now, when? So we have to start today. We have to start here, I think, and we can change the world. Thank you very much.